There's uncertainty among Wisconsin farmers as China raises tariffs on U.S. imports to 125%.
Those soybeans come from Iowa. China announced Friday a tariff of 125% on all U.S. imports, a response to President Trump's 145% rate on Chinese goods. The American Soybean Association's president says it's not good news for America's soybean farmers.
Farmers' plans are made years in advance, and changes are not made quickly. Regardless of the tariff, seeds like this will be planted in the fields.
We want to make sure there's fair trade for everyone and every product. We're hoping that there's a way that can be done without hurting agriculture.
The top U.S. farm export to China is soybean.
This goes far beyond a mere trade dispute. It's the disintegration of the agricultural landscape across the United States. Croplands remain barren. Grain elevators burst with surplus, dairy tanks sit idle, and farmers, once the bedrock of the American economy, see the collapse of their markets unfold before their eyes. What began as a trade war in 2025 has escalated into a full-blown structural emergency. At its core are U.S. tariffs that were originally intended to protect American jobs, but are now stifling the nation's ability to export. Let's start with soybeans, once the pride of U.S. agricultural exports. Today, they're in steep decline. China, the world's largest importer of soybeans, has pulled out of the U.S. market altogether. The reason? A retaliatory tariff of 125%, so high that American soybeans can no longer compete. Not a single new order has been received since January. The impact has been severe. Prices have plummeted, warehouses are overflowing, and Brazil is reaping the benefits as China redirects its demand to South America. Brazilian soy now sells at a premium, while U.S. farmers are slashing acreage to stay afloat. In Wisconsin alone, soybean acreage is expected to decline by more than 12%. Across the country, farmers are moving away from soy by the millions of acres. Some are switching to corn, while others are leaving agriculture altogether. But corn offers little relief. Prices are falling, and hopes that China would ramp up corn imports have evaporated. China is no longer an option. Even Mexico, the leading buyer of U.S. corn, is now considering its own tariffs. In this climate of uncertainty, farmers are planting more corn, but they're doing so with growing anxiety. Before we dig in further, take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us reach more viewers like you. Now let's chart the next course and break down what's coming next. China's message is unmistakably dire. Imports of U.S. corn, soybeans, and sorghum are being canceled in large quantities. In their place, China is turning to Brazil and Argentina, signing long-term deals that could permanently sideline American suppliers. And the impact goes beyond grain. It's hitting the meat industry too. U.S. pork, once a staple in the Chinese and Mexican markets, is now subject to crippling tariffs, some in excess of 170%, that effectively shut it out. Orders have dried up. Hog farmers are sounding the alarm about oversupply, and prices are on a downward spiral. Beef is under growing pressure. While the impact hasn't been as severe, new tariffs from China and the possibility of retaliation from Canada and Europe now threaten hard-earned export progress. Meanwhile, the dairy industry has been hit even harder. China's 125% tariff on U.S. dairy products has devastated exports of whey, milk powder, and cheese.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. We got some breaking news overnight. China raising its tariff on U.S. goods now to 125%. It says it no longer will match U.S. tariff increases because at this point, American imports aren't marketable.
Even longtime customers in Canada and Mexico are beginning to rethink their contracts. Processors are already cutting back. Cold storage facilities are reaching capacity. And as prices continue to fall, many dairy farms are once again on the brink of collapse. Even specialty crops have been hit hard. California almond growers have lost access to the Chinese market. Citrus growers now face tariffs from both Canada and China. In Washington, apple and cherry exports to Asia have all but collapsed. Pears are rotting in warehouses, leaving growers with a painful question. Who are we growing for? Sorghum, once seen as a bright spot, has also become a casualty. U.S. sorghum exports to China have plummeted by 95%, and without buyers, the grain is either stored, thrown away, or sold at a loss. Farmers are either cutting back acreage or holding out hope for a recovery, but the outlook remains grim. Wheat is also feeling the strain. China has shifted its purchases to Australia and Argentina, while Europe is now signaling possible tariffs on U.S. grain. In the Midwest, many farmers are wondering if they'll have any buyers at all. What's happening now is not just an economic crisis, it's an existential one. Farmers are taking their grievances to court, states are challenging the White House, and trade organizations are urging action. Behind the scenes, there's growing panic, because this isn't the first time. In 2018, a similar trade war cost U.S. farmers $27 billion, with soybeans accounting for 71% of the losses. Now, in 2025, history is repeating itself, but with fewer bailouts, less public patience, and even lower prices. U.S. agriculture is being pushed aside and global competitors are moving in fast. Brazil is setting new export records. Europe is taking over dairy supplies. Argentina is delivering wheat to fresh markets, and India is expanding its share of nuts and specialty crops. The rest of the world isn't waiting, and the U.S. is being left behind. Consumer costs are rising. Grocery bills go up. Everyday food imports, such as shrimp, fruit, and spices, now come with additional costs. Tariffs on essentials like fertilizer and packaging push prices even higher. Families are feeling the pinch, and for low-income Americans, the impact is particularly hard. Meanwhile, farmers are fighting bankruptcy. Loan defaults are rising. Equipment orders are being canceled. Mental health problems in rural communities are on the rise. This isn't just a trade war, it's a rural recession. And what did the government do? With a pause, a 90-day tariff delay, hints of possible new talks, vague promises of another bailout. But for farmers, delays aren't solutions. They need customers. They need contracts. They need certainty. Instead, they're facing chaos. And the longer that chaos continues, the deeper and more lasting the damage. Because it's not just about lost sales, it's about lost confidence. Foreign buyers are turning away, and some may not return for decades. U.S. agriculture has built its reputation on reliability, quality, and strong partnerships. In 2025, that reputation is at risk, and the tough question remains, how much more can America's farmers take? Because what's happening is not just politics. It's a fight for existence. It's about whether small farms, the heart of rural America, can survive a political battlefield that seems to completely overlook their value. On the ground, the choices are heartbreaking. Families are selling off their livestock. Farms that have been in the family for generations are closing their doors. Rural banks are pulling back on lending. And state fairs, once vibrant showcases of prosperity, are now marked by empty booths and foreclosure notices. The social toll is mounting. Mental health hotlines in farming communities are reporting record numbers of calls. In states like Iowa and Nebraska, rural therapists are seeing sharp increases in anxiety, depression, and even suicide risk. The fear of losing land, heritage, and livelihoods is no longer a distant concern. It's a harsh reality that grows by the day. Meanwhile, in Washington, the rhetoric continues. But out in America's heartland, patience is wearing thin. And in cities like Beijing, Sao Paulo, and Brussels, the shift is already underway. New alliances, new supply chains, new loyalties. American farmers are watching their hard-earned land slip away, not because of drought or disease, but because of a war they never asked for. If you enjoyed this analysis, be sure to subscribe to Globelines, your ultimate destination for economic insight, global shifts, and every twist and turn in the political and financial landscape. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay informed and keep your insights sharp. You can watch any of the videos on the screen now, there's plenty more to dive into.